The Devil's Advocates radio show is broadcast under a time brokerage agreement between Devil Radio and Civic Media, Inc. Some portions of this program may be pre-recorded. Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever, and due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the Civic Media Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
And now, here's your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show live on the road. Dom, it's a pure Michigan Monday edition.
Crute, great to be with you in Michigan once again. Thank you, Aaron, stepping up on the board. Of course, our fair audience. An hour earlier joining us. We appreciate all of you as well.
It's been a long time since we did a 3-hour show.
I know, it's almost like work now.
It feels like the first time. You know, it was so long ago that we were 3-hour virgins, Dom. But here we are again.
Down that road again.
Here we are again, and we're on the road again, Dom. The freedom. Pardon me, I keep wanting to just lead with freedom.
Freedom.
It feels right.
Freedom.
For the Love of Democracy Tour 2024. Thank you to our fine sponsor partner, Chad's Design Build.
Thanks, Chad.
Puts us on the road again, Dom. And you came with. Here we both are. And we're in Michigan. And there are stories that connect our two states. And it's not just the horse race, because the horse race ain't much of a horse race.
No.
And we'll tell you more about that in the 4 o'clock hour, Dom. But the connection between Wisconsin and Michigan, it's not just that both states look like, you know, Russ Feingold's hands, or maybe Bertie's mittens, I'm not clear. But, you know, we share this fake elector plot.
Oh, not like Michigan, not Midwest states, not an affinity for fine beer.
Both Big Ten states.
Right?
We have
good
NFC North football
teams.
We
have a lot in common.
We do, and a fake elector plot. And the involvement of Kenneth Chesebro. We've said this name a lot, Dom. And today there's new news.
New news.
Regarding Mr. Chesebro, and perhaps, Dom, he has perjured himself in his involvement with the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, the Michigan prosecutor's testimony that he has given, and a lot of this has been leaked to apparently CNN. We've had tapes of him giving the testimony, but he made representations that may or may not have been true, Dom.
Maybe.
This is how it's being reported. I'm going to start with the raw story. Always a great show when you could lead with the raw story, Dom. More indictments await. Legal experts, plural, respond to Kenneth Chesebro's secret Twitter account.
Uh-oh.
He had a clandestine Twitter account, Dom.
I wonder if his wife knew he had a secret Twitter account.
Donald Trump ally, an election-denying lawyer, Kenneth Chesebro, has lied to Michigan prosecutors when he claimed he never used one of his social media accounts, a new report suggests. But he had a burner account, Dom, a burner Twitter account. I bet you got a burner Twitter account.
I do. It's called the Devil's Advocates. You can find it at Devil Radio.
Which contradicts what he told prosecutors.
Uh-oh. Now, if you're contradicting what you tell prosecutors, don't they have a word for that?
Yeah, I think it's called perjury. Harvard constitutional law professor Lawrence Tribe explained the revelation. Means Chesebro's legal troubles have just begun, and it will likely mean more charges. Here's a quote, Tom. When Ken Chesebro surfaced in this mess, at first, I felt a bit of pity for the guy. No more, Tribe wrote.
No pity.
Not only did he plot to overturn the constitutional transfer of power to the newly elected president, but he's been lying to pretty much everyone about his role. More indictments await. A little bit more from the quote, Tribe. Chesebro's secret Twitter account could lead to serious felony charges in Michigan and will augment his eventual federal indictment by Jack Smith. This guy's in a huge heap of trouble that his guilty plea in Georgia barely touches. Barely touches, Dom.
Crute Cheeseboro's been described as an architect of Trump's fake elector scheme after the 2020 election. He was charged as a co-conspirator in the Fulton County racketeering case alongside Trump, but he made a plea deal. Wonder if he was honest on that plea deal. CNN reported Monday that Cheeseboro had a secret Twitter account called Badger Pundit. Badger Pundit.
Badger Pundit.
Spelled
I think
wrong
that's
here.
a typo.
Yes, typo. Badger Pundit. On which he made dozens of posts involving the Trump election claims. He had told investigators that he did not use X, Twitter, and dozens of the posts that he had made on it contradict statements he made about his role in the election subversion scheme, the report stated. Former federal and state prosecutor Eric Leeson agreed with Tribe, saying Cheeseboro will likely face further charges. His quote, this should line up Cheeseboro for prosecution in Michigan under their false statement statute, which, although seemingly less broad than his federal counterpart, could still cover this. Cheeseboro was directly asked about this and denied other accounts as part of his Michigan debriefing. Those statements also contradict his exculpatory assertions. The failure to disclose also violates his cooperation agreement there. Cheeseboro seems utterly discredited.
You know, I had wondered, it almost struck me that this Kenneth Cheeseboro, the architect of the plan, was somehow going to get away with it simply by being the first rat. The first rat off the ship.
Yes.
And of course, when we've heard his testimony, and we've heard it because there's tapes, we've heard apparently recordings that I've always conjectured that they were recordings made by Cheeseboro, self-serving recordings, right?
Yes.
Of course he wants to play what he told the prosecutors. But what if during the course of all these pleadings and these pre-offers, Dom, what if he was lying about just how involved and how supportive of these actions he was? Because the Twitter account, the Badger Pundit account, Dom, it was out there saying really positive things about this plan, this coup plan, right?
Molly Beck also reports on this very topic in the local Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. The account, this Badger Pundit account, tweeted more than 50 times that Pence could count the false Trump electors in the final tally, according to CNN. Cheeseboro, and we affectionately call him Cheeseboro.
Cheesebro.
We know it's Chesbro, but we don't care. We're disrespecting him. Cheeseboro. Don't be a Cheeseboro. Cheeseboro initially told Michigan prosecutors he felt misled by the Trump campaign about the fake elector plan. Does that sound familiar?
Andrew had said something similar on 60 Minutes recently.
That he felt misled by the Trump campaign about the fake elector plan, but Crute, the Badger Pundit account, also defended the plot. The blog associated with the social media account dates back to 2011, inspired by the Act 10 legislation that spun Wisconsin politics into turmoil. Attorneys for Cheeseboro told CNN there's clearly a conflict between what Cheeseboro told investigators and what he tweeted.
A conflict, a perjurous conflict, right? When you lied to the prosecutors, that's going to have some consequence, I suspect, Dom.
It just keeps getting worse. I guess more is coming to light. That's good. Why is it taking so long? But this is obviously good news if you care about transparency and you want see some justice done in this case. And I just don't understand. I guess I do understand that self-preservation. I think you're going to get away with it. But if you're someone like Cheeseboro and you specifically tell investigators, no, never on Twitter. Wasn't me. Well, I mean. Yeah. You think that's not going to get found out? I mean, the fingerprints on the internet these days?
Well, if you strongly deny.
If you say it with conviction, it must be true. Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Crute and I are on the road. Oh, we got to mention our fine host here, the Rochester Corner Bar. Thank you, Chris, for allowing us to hang out here last night. Had a great dinner, had some drinks, had to figure out where we're going to broadcast. Had to figure out where we're going to broadcast from today. We reached out. He kindly allowed us to sit in the corner over here like we normally do.
Sit in the corner. Mind your own business. Be quiet.
So we appreciate that. Perhaps we'll talk to Chris later today. But you can also join us on the road on the phones at 844-967-2789. Amazing, Crute. We're in Michigan, and now we're talking about a guy from Wisconsin who lied to investigators in Michigan.
And he was part of the larger underlying plot, the architect, one might say, and I thought he was going to get away with it, Dom, simply by being the first and greatest sellout.
The first canary to sing.
But he couldn't just tell the truth and nothing but the truth. He had to paint himself as, a little less complicit.
Well, but if you have these guys using the same excuse, I felt misled by the Trump campaign, or
Yes.
the lawyers said we could do all this. It's hard for me to believe that these very well educated, highly paid political operatives just didn't know what they were doing. I mean, it's one thing for that 80-year-old Michigan guy. I almost believe that guy. Guys like Andrew Hitt, guys like Kenneth Cheesebro, no, man. Hard to believe.
Maybe it's the law degrees. Maybe it's the fact that, they were at the very highest levels of leadership. In Chesebro's case, he was the architect of the coup attempt. And in the case of Andrew Hitt, he still is a highly paid legal counsel offering political representation in the state of Wisconsin, yet somehow he was boomswoggled
And scared.
at the advice of Trump's counsel, which my understanding was Rudy Giuliani. And if I understand correctly from his bankruptcy filings, now I'm talking about Rudy Giuliani,
yeah.
he got stiffed on the coup work. The legal work that Rudy performed to undertake a coup is still outstanding from the Trump campaign.
If he doesn't get paid
Giuliani.
for it, is he not complicit? Hey, man, that's an outstanding bill. You can't blame me for that.
You can't even say I was their counsel.
I mean,
They never paid me anything.
It's over 120 days old, man. It's going to collection.
They only paid some of Rudy's expenses. Not even all of Rudy's expenses, because there are probably some excess bar expenses on Rudy's tab.
You think?
I suspect we might have a few here
Hair
at the
dye.
Rochester Corner Bear before the night's over. We are in Michigan, pure Michigan, broadcasting live down. We're on the For the Love of Democracy Tour 2024, and you can come with. Join us on the phones in a 3-hour edition. Aaron helping us, screening your calls lightly. Well, this feels like the first time all over again. Go gentle on us. 844-967-2789. Back from Michigan. Stick around. I know you will.
Open up the door. Won't you open up the door? Yeah. Feels like the first time. It feels like the very first time. It feels like the first time.
Can you turn Crute up just a touch?
Just a touch. I'll move it. How about now?
Or moving it closer, that works too.
Yeah, I just moved it a little closer because I was getting a little coffee there,
Right.
and I didn't want to.
Check 1 2. How am I sounding, Aaron? Check
Good.
1
Good.
2 1 2. Okay, good.
Any song thoughts?
No, man. What are you feeling?
One bourbon, one shot, and one beer. We're at a bar. Some barish tune.
All right.
About the house
Occupy didn't start on Wall Street. It started on our street.
I come home on
the
Friday.
Devil's Advocates.
Had to tell the landlady I done lost my job.
Yeah, thank you for listening to the
Shut that
Devil's
up
Advocates
before me.
Radio Show. Dom Crute on the road for the Love of Democracy Tour 2024, bringing us to the Rochester Corner Bar in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. Love it here in Michigan. Primary going on tomorrow. That's why the Devils are here today. You can join us on the lines 844-967-2789.
And Dom, you dragged me down to Detroit, down to Cadillac Square today. We met some folks. We'll share a little of the Man on the Street Monday stuff a little bit later in the big show. But let's look back across the pond, Lake Michigan, if we will, at the great state of Wisconsin, Dom, because, we've talked about the big lie has sort of lived on. The big lie, of course, being that it was rigged and somehow Donald Trump lost this election. Hell, it was stolen from him. That's the big lie to my perception.
Yes.
And it undermines so much of the politicking going on, right? And one of the big issues here in the state of Wisconsin, we sit in Michigan, but we turn our attention to Wisconsin, is the absentee ballots that always get counted on Election Day at the end of the night, and then we see this ballot dump, as it's sometimes called. And, Dom, I remember fondly sitting with you at the Roman Coin on Election Night in November 2018 when the late ballots came in and they turned against Scott Walker, and the wanker went in the rearview mirror, and it was a glorious night, and it went far too late in the evening, but we were celebratory.
And
That
what
was
were
a
we waiting
great
for?
evening.
We
were
knew.
Waiting
Yeah.
for the Milwaukee County absentee ballots to come in, and sure enough, when they did, it was numerically significant enough to flip, quote unquote, from Walker to Evers.
Now, even in the terms, though, to say flip, it implies something. To say a ballot dump implies something. There's no flipping. The score is the score. It may change, but there's no flipping. No ballot dump. These ballots are there. They're just not allowed to be counted beforehand.
Well, not under current law. So seems like, we should have some bipartisan support because, of course, counting these ballots late at night and then having the specter of a recount or whatever the case may be, for otherwise just people that are dedicated elections officials. And we have so many of them in the state of Wisconsin. We have like 1,835 decentralized elections locations. And there's a lot of ballots to count, right?
Yes.
And then you add on the absentee ballots. You can't start counting them until the polls close under current law. And it gets to be a really late night. And then like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, Milwaukee County comes in, Dane County comes in. And the math seemingly turns from red to blue. Because all the reds, at least especially of late during the pandemic years, well, they were only voting in person. They didn't like these absentee ballots. Implies you're weak somehow if you don't want to go out to the poll during a
pandemic. If you believe the
pandemic.
former president, he literally says that there's fraud. It's fraud. Absentee ballots cause fraud, or if it's involved, it's fraud. Fraud.
Well, okay, so that brings us to today and a resolution, a proposed piece of legislation that would solve the problem. Let them count the ballots earlier.
Well, what? Wait. I mean, this is good governance. We have a problem counting the ballots. Maybe start them a little earlier, and then they won't have to worry about doing it so late at night, and it won't have the specter of impropriety.
Well, that'd be a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. The Senate author of the bill, your buddy, Devin Hugh, has killed the bill. Or at least he's not advancing it forward. And apparently it's because of the concerns of your senator, Dan Knodel, who expressed it was really about the concerns, and I want to make sure I get this properly, Dom. Let me check my notes here. The concerns of the alleged felonious election rigger, Janelle Branchen.
Rep. Janelle Branchen.
Yes. It's her concerns that underline Knodel's concerns, which are the reason that LeMahieu won't bring the bill he authored to the floor that would actually solve the problem, because the woman that would rig elections in the state of Wisconsin, at least financially, had no qualms breaking campaign finance rules.
According to the Wisconsin Ethics Commission last week.
And she's the same one that thought, we should have overturned the certified outcomes of Wisconsin's last election, the 2020, because she didn't like the outcome. Felt like it was a jam job for her guy. Because he said it a lot, and she's seemingly quite gullible.
Now, does her
Or
credibility...
corrupt, depending on your point of view.
Maybe both?
Can it be both?
I think it can be. Does the credibility of Rep. Branchen be called into question if she's going to so obviously, feloniously circumvent campaign finance limits? To what? To get their mega candidate, Adam Steen in this case, in order to satisfy Donald Trump, because Assembly Speaker Robin Vos didn't do exactly what Donald Trump wanted to do?
Well, I think you're starting to catch on now.
I'm seeing this. I'm seeing it. I think you'd have to question her credibility. I think you'd have to question her motives. You certainly have to question whether or not you would hold up a perhaps bipartisan bill, which I think it would be if people want to solve this problem. Maybe you shouldn't be concerned about what Janelle Brandon is concerned about.
Well, here's a little of the coverage from the Journal Sentinel. Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu is signaling he won't seek a vote on a bill that would allow election clerks to start processing absentee ballots the day before Election Day, despite once authoring the proposal himself. I am so against this bill, I wrote. Down by refusing to bring the bill to the floor before lawmakers and adjourn for the year, Senate Republicans are leaving open the door for more false claims by former President Donald Trump about the integrity of Wisconsin's election.
Oh, there we go. There's the motivation.
Plausible rigging. We want to be able to make the accusation because he's not going to win. And just after losing re-election in 2020, Trump claimed late-night ballot dumps in Milwaukee were to blame for his loss, falsely implying illegal votes were cast. Election workers, including in Milwaukee, may not count absentee ballots until Election Day. In Milwaukee, that means processing at times more than 100,000 ballots while also administering the polls. Very uncomplicated, right? Why would we seek this pressure, this bottleneck? Well, of course, so Trump can claim it's rigged again. The absentee ballots in Milwaukee and several other Wisconsin cities are counted at a central facility, and the ballots results are posted all at once. During large elections like the presidential in 2020, results are often not ready until, let's call it, late at night. Yeah, I remember a few of those late nights, Dom. And Trump used this practice to falsely claim that large postings of results were instead a fraudulent dump, much like he does in his defense, allegedly, Dom, of ballots to doom his reelection. And clerks and bipartisan lawmakers have pushed lawmakers to allow them to start processing absentee ballots the Monday before Election Day to prevent voter confusion and conspiracies that result from large amounts of ballots being processed late and added to totals, sometimes changing which candidate is in the lead. As one would predict if one looked at the simple number of outstanding absentee ballots that had not yet been counted.
And how does Milwaukee County, Dane County, how do they traditionally vote? And can you extrapolate what a predictive number would be? Probably.
Come back with us. Pure Michigan. Dom Crute on the road again for the Love of Democracy Tour 2024. Thanks, Chad's Design Build. Thanks, Rochester Corner Bar, for hosting us. We'll come back here. You can always be a part. 844-967-2789. We like a party. We're gonna have a political one right now.
One's got one beer.
All right. Any thoughts on another song or anything else?
Let's see. How about Red Hot Chili Pepper, My Friends?
Is that the one where going road tripping with my two allies?
What's that from?
That's a Californication tour. I forget what song it is. Hold on, I'll tell you. Road tripping.
Road tripping.
Hey, Aaron, can I request? Aaron, can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yep.
Instead of what Dom said, could I request the song Road Trippin', No G, from Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Okay. I'll keep the other one open just in case you want it after later, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the road tripping kind of describes what we're doing. I thought about this tune on the way over. Any callers, Aaron?
There's one on the line right now. I'm just about to screen it. Just a second.
Yeah,
Let me guess, Mark from the Sack. No, he's probably listening to
my just so you know, my stack is kind of going up and down. My signal's not great here, so
I
if
can
don't-
just send a
this-
message to the show space, the Devil's Advocates thing, if that
Okay.
works.
We'll make it work, dude. I think we talk about Nancy and Uncle Joe and playing video games till late in the night. You know, more a little bleed on us because, I mean, people aren't expecting us to be on right now. You know,
Tutter Billy.
Don't want to use it all the
Yeah,
good
you gotta
stuff.
stretch
up
it
here.
out, baby. You know what I'm saying?
We could touch on the Eric Hodvi. I don't think we've
What's the new hook? Oh, the
just the IFVF,
Yeah.
but point out we are trying to be bipartisan. We have invited the man on. And I said, hey, if your guy happens to be in Wisconsin someday soon,
Trump got his wife's name wrong, called her Mercedes.
is there more there on the whole LeMahieu thing?
No, I think that's kind of it. Let's see. Why does this keep dropping on me?
You Verizon, what's your...
AT&T.
Seems like our thing's holding so far.
What's that one? That hotspot? What is that one from Verizon?
They didn't know it was called an access. She didn't know what channel to use.
She said she had access up.
Yeah, she had access up. Just for some reason, the audio wasn't going both ways. So something was wrong with it.
Oh, okay.
All right, 20 seconds.
All right,
That's
thanks.
okay. Dom had to do all the heavy lifting. It took a little...
The Devil's Advocates. Political commentary from the back of the class.
Road tripping with my two favorite allies.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, live on the road again in Michigan, pure Michigan. That's what we're bringing you here. We're at the Rochester Corner Bar, Rochester. That's just outside Detroit. This is your old stomping grounds around here,
man.
right,
I
Don?
lived right up the road from here for many years.
It was very interesting. When we arrived at Cousin Joe, as he's affectionately called on the radio, when we arrived at his beautiful home, and he's got a bit of a McMansion, him and Nancy. He is, a Chrysler executive or something related to the
Auto industry. yes.
highfalutin parts of the auto industry. And he actually got me a green sheet. Thank you, Cousin Joe. And we're not even cousins, so he must be a big shot. But I got to his house last night, and he said, welcome to my home. And I said, for the third time.
I know. Can you believe it, dude?
It's the third presidential cycle that we've come to Michigan. And, Dom, I don't think there's the same amount of excitement. Some of the luster of these primary have worn off here. And I think probably because they're not competitive. Last couple times around, when we came to Michigan, Michigan meant something. Unless you're holding out hope for a Nikki Haley, Hail Mary pass, I don't think there's going to be a lot of doubt about what happens here in the state of Michigan. But I want to talk about your cousin Joe's wife, Nancy. And I was quite impressed to learn Nancy is the mayor pro temp of Rochester, Michigan.
Yeah.
She's very involved in the local politics.
Yes.
And mayor pro temp means effectively, should the mayor have some health consequence, something, it's like being the vice mayor.
Right.
She's the vice president mayor. She's the spare, but as fate would have it, today she is the acting mayor of Rochester, Michigan. Apparently, the number one guy is a little under the weather. He's got something of a stomach flu,
And there's a council meeting tonight.
so she's in charge, and she is very active in the local politics.
Yeah.
And it's clear to me that she really likes this, and she brought us over here, this Rochester Quarter Bar, and Chris, the proprietor here, was bragging about his experience with the community of Rochester and what a positive interaction as a small business owner. And he's like, man, you should have seen some of the messes we had to clean up. And he meant remodeling this restaurant. And it's turned into a very nice space.
A very old building. Lot of work to do here.
A lot of remodeling, a lot of interactions with the administration, the
Yeah, the
bureaucracy,
inspectors and
the
all that,
inspectors
yeah,
and
yeah.
all that. And Chris had very nice things to say about the way Rochester worked, and he was less complimentary of some of the surrounding communities, who he had also interacted with, and said they have let's just say, a differing attitude towards small business.
Right.
So he loves it here, and this is a nice community, man. This is,
Rochester's a beautiful little town, yeah.
and all the restaurants are nice, and the downtown area is beautiful. And Nancy is so clearly involved in her local politics. But I teased her a little bit. We saw her before we came to do the big show today, and I said, Nancy, some of the people here in Michigan have been a little coy about their politics. What is your politics, if I may ask? And she said, my politics are local.
Yes.
And that was
Well, I would say this. Very involved in local governance.
Yes.
I think stays away from some of the politics. That's, you know what I mean? 'Cause-
governance. You mean
yeah.
the actual getting of stuff done.
Yes, absolutely.
As opposed to the comparing ideologies and fighting from our respective blue and red corners.
Right,
Yes,
exactly.
I would agree. She is in the business of getting things done for her constituents, and it was so obvious to me. And she clearly takes some pride in the fact that while we were here, she was the acting mayor.
Today she is, yes.
Almost wonder if she slipped him a Mickey or something, like, hey,
Come on.
have a couple extra cocktails with Sunday night dinner. I got family in town. I want to be a big shot for a day. So congratulations, Cousin Nancy, the acting mayor of Rochester, Michigan, and a very politically involved local person. And, when we went into Detroit today, normally I make you drive me straight to a diner, right? Got to go get the local eggs.
Yep.
See what's at the diner. I usually can get some fresh fruit, some crepes or something. I went with some very patriotic French toast today.
Yeah, very
Red, white, and blue.
Yeah,
I had the
man.
blueberries and the white cream and some red sauce.
It looked about 1,200 calories, yes.
Oh, it looks very patriotic. The real Americans eat patriotic French toast. See what I did there with
I
the French
see that.
toast?
I see that.
But
USA toast.
some of the neighbors sitting next to us, three gentlemen joining each other, and they had clearly finished their meal, so I didn't mind approaching them. I'm not panhandling. I just wanted to talk to the people.
Not today. You got to
Not today. So I did. I asked this group, and the first one that responded said, I didn't know there was a primary tomorrow.
Right.
And the second gentleman that responded said, I am aware, and I early absentee voted, but, leave us alone. We're enjoying each other's company or whatever. He was nice, but, he
Didn't
let us know
want to be interviewed.
he didn't want to be interviewed about his politics. And that kind of became a theme of some of our day in Detroit today. A lot of people, they said they had some political opinions, but they were less interested in expressing them.
Well, perhaps not sharing them with some stranger off the street.
But we've never had that problem before.
Very rarely.
I mean, I throw my dimples at people. I give them the charming Crute.
Well, you got to keep asking, right?
I smile.
And you usually get them.
I usually get them. But here's why I tell the story, and we'll get to you on the phones. Just a moment. Be patient. Todd or Billy, you're first in the queue, so you better be patient. At 844-967-2789. Here's the point. Immediately after I said, yeah, thanks, gentlemen. Don't mean to bother you, and sat back down. But now I'm like 3 feet away from them, right? I can still hear these guys talking. Right. And I was proud of nothing else. The one guy that had voted early absentee said that, there were some local issues on the ballot, and he wanted his friends to be considerate. And, you can get a Democratic primary ballot or you can get a Republican primary ballot.
So literally educating them how it worked. Yeah.
And myself. And this term they use locally, millage. The schools have a millage, which is similar to a referendum in Wisconsin. Only my impression, only because Mayor Pro Tem Nancy was explaining this, they must have one in Rochester as well. Part of the millage is to continue the funding mechanism, make it an ongoing thing. At least that's my takeaway as Nancy explained it to me. I heard this gentleman explain to his neighbors, and he talked about voting in Camden. He said, in Camden, we've got a millage. It's on the ballot. I think you should vote for it. That is obviously support the public schools. And, I pointed out in the state of Wisconsin for so often, Dom, because of the gerrymandering, and this is the way I tried to explain our politics to the Michiganders, who maybe look and say, well, you're blue at the top of the ticket. You got Tony Evers. You got Josh Culp. Hell, you got Tammy Baldwin. How'd you end up with Ron Johnson? I said, that's a longer story. But then you look at our congressional delegation. It's 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Well, that's gerrymandering, at least in part. And you look at the state legislature, and it's 2/3 Republican, yet they rarely win a statewide election. Republicans do. They get 45% of the vote, and they get 66%.
Doesn't seem right.
Well, that's because it's the most partisan gerrymander in America. And the will of Wisconsinites doesn't often come through the legislative actions of these Republicans. Even what Republicans express as their will isn't reflected in the legislation coming through these houses. And I'm looking at you, Robin Voss. But the kicker in the state of Wisconsin, and this was the old trick, all the way back to Scott Fitzgerald days. And I had a friend who was a school administrator, and he got up there in front of these Republican leadership, and they said it aloud. We're never going to raise your revenue. We'll make you raise your own taxes.
Right.
You can go raise your own taxes through referendum, and we're never the bad guys. Well, in the state of Michigan, I was encouraged, if nothing else, when they talked about local politics and just being civically minded, everyone thought it was a good idea to vote for the millage for their local schools, to continue to, fund through the local mechanisms.
Yes. That's the rate on their taxes. That's the millage rate is the rate that they pay per property taxes. So if that rate goes up, then they're funding more towards the schools.
844-967-2789. Todd or Billy still there?
No, we lost him.
Oh man, Totter. now you got me. Now you got me disillusioned for all other callers for a while. 844-967-2789. But we came to this nice restaurant last night, and I ate my share, and I had some cocktails, and then we went back to Cousin Joe and Nancy's house, and Dom, their basement.
The 80s basement
has evolved. I've been to the house 3 times. Last time was 4 years ago during the presidential cycle. First time around, we went to Flint, Michigan for a debate. We stayed by Joe and Nancy's house. That was the Bernie Sanders-Hillary Clinton debate. I got to ask Bernie Sanders that day, Bernie, you got to win Michigan. Ask me on Tuesday night. Well, unfortunately, by Tuesday night, Bernie was down in Florida with some seaweed in his teeth, but he was on the TV expressing his victory in the state of Michigan, and that was an unexpected victory during the Democratic presidential primary, and of course in 2020 Joe Biden was here, and we saw this happen later in the presidential cycle, did we not? I forget precisely. I believe we were here, and Biden and many of the others were debating, and it was at the Red Wing Stadium. And I
We were
actually
downtown, yeah.
yeah, we saw Ben Wickler, the Wisconsin Democratic Party chair. We introduced him to a few friends. He was still newer at that time in that role, but I think that was probably early fall of 2019.
It was nice out. Yeah, it wasn't
And-
like cold like Flint.
No, and we did have an opportunity at that trip to interview Dana Nessel through a little nepotism on your side. Don.
Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, so call Tommy, see if we can get Dana Nessel on the show tomorrow before we roll out of Michigan. But we're here for the primary, and I got to tell you, Dom, I didn't feel that same energy on the streets, but it's not a competitive primary here in the state of Michigan. And in fact, some of the action and some of the questions I did ask of people on the street, there's a movement underway to undermine the president in his basically unchallenged Democratic primary, right?
Send a message.
Send a message. And the message was much like Nikki Haley had to deal with, and I believe that was in the primary in Nevada, where none of the above or none of these candidates was a choice and actually beat Nikki Haley. There are many young progressives here in the state of Michigan, and those that would be a little disillusioned by U.S. foreign policy currently in regards to Gaza, those that are Palestinian supportive. There's a movement afoot to vote non-committed, uncommitted, to effectively say none of the above in the Democratic primary, to send a message of sorts, and we'll see what sort of numbers, how impactful this movement has been. But when I ask people about it, people seemed a little sour on the whole movement. They didn't like this idea. And most of the people we spoke to were older. We met many African Americans in Cadillac Square in Detroit. This was, at least demographically, probably a better sample of Americans than we're often able to find. Certainly at a Trump rally. And
Or Iowa.
Yes, demographically, a lot more people and a lot more African Americans and a lot more Biden supportive. But no one seemed too keen on this idea. And maybe it's because we didn't find any young progressives to talk to us on the street today, Dom. But I didn't see a lot of support for, sticking it to Biden.
The campaign, according to Time magazine, called Listen to Michigan, encouraging voters to vote uncommitted, quote-unquote, uncommitted, in the state's primary, as tomorrow, a quote, the Democratic primary election is an opportunity to question whether the incumbent genuinely holds the support of his own party's base. It's gotten significant support, according to Time magazine, endorsed by Detroit's Metro Times and the Democratic Socialists of America's local and national chapters.
Folks, we are the Devil's Advocates, road tripping, purely Michigan style primary tomorrow in the state. I'm not sure if many of them have heard. Maybe it's the lack of TV advertising. Now, some of the other primary states I've been to, like Nevada, Iowa, I'd seen the ads. I haven't seen too many political ads. More Devil's Advocates. We'll be back.
Your smiling eyes are just a miracle.
All right. Any song you want for the last segment of the first hour?
How about Stop Your Crying by Bob Mould?
I was thinking Pac-Man Fever.
We can save it for the happy hour.
Maybe just Eric Hodvie.
Oh, sure. It's a local thing. Let me see.
The Devil's Advocates, the fix for political junkies everywhere.
And thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show live on the road. Rochester Corner Bar for the Low of Democracy Tour 2024. Thank you, Chad's Design Build. You can join us on the road. Wrapping up our first of 3 hours, 844-967-2789.
You know, our friend John Nichols at the Cap Times writes on this very topic. Michigan Democrats want to send Biden a message about Gaza. I'm going to read a little from John's column, again at the Cap Times. Former Michigan U.S. Rep. Andy Levin is a veteran union organizer who comes from one of Michigan's most prominent Democratic families. He knows Joe Biden, and he supported the president in the past. He wants very much to see Donald Trump defeated in November. But Levin is not urging Michigan Democrats to vote for Biden in the state's primary tomorrow, Democratic presidential primary. Instead, he's arguing they should cast an uncommitted vote in order to signal to the president that he must end U.S. support for Israel's assault on Gaza, which has left almost 30,000 Palestinians dead. Levin, who during his time as a member of the House emerged as one of Congress's most ardent advocates for peace and justice in the Middle East, is one of many Michigan Democrats who worried that Biden could lose the battleground state this fall, and with it the White House, because of the president's refusal to demand a ceasefire in Gaza and his ongoing support for U.S. military aid to Israel. Here's a quote from Levin, his father, a former senator. As a Michigander, I'm concerned about the impact that Biden's funding of Israel's war will have on our fight against Trump and for democracy. I'm hearing from so many, especially young people, the thousands of innocents dying under U.S. bombs and warplanes makes them feel ashamed. A little bit more here, Dom. Levin's not alone in worrying that the Biden administration's support for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government in the war it launched in Gaza following the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack on Israelis, the Israelis' kibbutz and musical festival, will prove so unpopular in Michigan, a state with a large and politically influential Arab American population, that Biden could lose in November to Trump. U.S. Rep. Rashida Tlaib, a Palestinian-American Democrat who represents communities with some of the largest Muslim populations in the United States, has warned American Muslims and Arab Americans do not feel represented by our government right now. And Levin, who's a Jewish American who has clashed with the Netanyahu-aligned political groups, such as the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee. Tlaib is a Palestinian American who was one of the first 2 Muslim women elected to the U.S. House. They're trying to send Biden a message about the moral urgency of supporting a ceasefire in Gaza and about the political urgency of addressing the concerns in Michigan, the concerns of Michigan voters regarding the assault on Palestinians. Both of them are supporting the Listen to Michigan campaign that urges voters in the state's Democratic primary to skip over Biden's name and support the uncommitted option on the ballot. This is the way you can raise our voices, Tlaib said in a video. Right now we feel completely neglected and just unseen by our government. Tlaib, who actively campaigned for Biden in the fall of 2020, says she backs an uncommitted vote in the primary because it's also important to create a voting bloc, something that is a bullhorn to say enough is enough. And we don't want a country that supports war and bombs and destruction. We want to support life. We want to stand up for every single life killed in Gaza. Dom, the Listen to Michigan campaign has gained significant traction as the primary approaches. It is backed by more than 30 Democratic elected officials, including Dearborn Mayor Abdullah Hamad, who leads a city with one of the largest Arab American populations in the U.S., and State Rep. Abraham Alasha. I'm not sure that I got that right. The party's majority leader in the State House of Representatives. And the Listen to Michigan effort has also been endorsed widely by the circulated Metro Times newspaper in Detroit, and it got the backing of Detroit's well-established Democratic Socialist of America Local and the national progressive group Our Revolution. In a letter to 87,000 Our Revolution supporters in Michigan, Levin wrote, "We need to send President Biden a message. We are outraged by a U.S. complicity in the destruction of Gaza, the killing of thousands of civilians, including more than 10,000 children, and it must, all caps, stop. While the letter expressed opposition to Biden's policies, it was not an anti-Biden missive. In fact, Levin wrote, our Rev supporters can push Biden to change course on Gaza now and increase his chances of winning Michigan in November because we must defeat the right-wing Trump agenda. It's hard to see how Biden can beat Trump without Michigan. That's because the state is part of the blue wall, along with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, that has proven to be critical for Democratic presidential prospects in recent years. In 2016, Democrat Hillary Clinton lost the blue wall states to Republicans, and Trump became president. In 2020, Trump lost the states to Democrats, and Biden became president. This year, Biden is holding his own in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but he's trailing in Michigan. In every poll published since November, Trump held the lead, sometimes by as much as 8 to 10 points. Biden's weakness with Arab American voters, young voters, and others who are concerned about Gaza is seen as a key explanation for why he's having trouble in Michigan, a state where he carried in 2020 by more than 150,000 votes. I'm going to remind Wisconsinites that was not the margin in our state, and a state where Democrats controlled the governorship, other statewide posts, and the legislature. That suggests Levin is why Michigan Democrats are trying to get a message to Biden with the uncommitted campaign. I feel this is existential for Joe Biden's political survival. I don't see how he wins re-election without winning Michigan, and I don't see how he wins Michigan without changing course. So says our friend John Nichols, of course, at the Cap Times and the Nation nationally.
Crute, on this very topic, apparently Time Magazine reporting that Dearborn alone has seen 6,000 requests for absentee ballots compared to 2,200 in 2020. Perhaps some increase in the uncommitted voters. 844-967-2789. Let's squeeze in Dave from Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome, Dave. What do you got for us?
Hey, Dave.
Yeah, hi, how are you? Regardless of what we think about whether or not there should be a truce, not a truce, but a ceasefire, I want to say that, when there's decisions against the state of Israel made by the United States, and there's a lot of them, there have been historically, the Jewish community has never wavered from voting for Democrats. In fact, former head of the Barney Frank, former head of the Finance Committee, used to say the two most reliable voters are the Jews and the gays. He was a gay congressman from.
No, I remember Barney Frank had the opportunity to interview him once upon a time. Folks, we're the Devil's Advocates. Come back. Hour 2 is next.
All right.
Thanks, Aaron. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.